Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the marbled shadows of ancient Rome where senators in crimson-trimmed togas tread carefully. Not just because the floor might be slick, but because the chamber they're entering is no ordinary space. It's a communal restroom, yes, for senators, and it's more treacherous than any battlefield or forum debate. You lower yourself onto chilled stone beside strangers, knowing that even here, under flickering oil lamps, politics oozes through. The air like the ever-present stench of the Tiber. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your country and local time in the comments now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a Roman senator, not one of the sweaty plebs or sword-slinging centurions, but a robe-draped dignitary expected to keep your nose high and your sandals clean. Your day begins in a domus, adorned with frescoes and fountains, perhaps interrupted by an early morning speech practice or a late-night tryst gone politically inconvenient, but now you need to go, and in Rome. Even that is a public affair. The latrine is nestled beside the bustling bathhouse, its outer colonnade still echoing with laughter and gossip from the heated pools. The floor mosaic tiled is surprisingly. Elegant, inlaid dolphins chase each other around the edge, their tiny stone eyes staring blankly at what happens here daily. 20 or so stone seats, evenly spaced, perch above a gently flowing water channel designed to whisk away your contributions to Rome's complex sewage network. The Cloaca Maxima. You hover near the entrance, watching others exit. A young senator wipes his hands with perfumed cloth, smirking, while an older man glances behind him twice before leaving in a tight shuffle. A nervous rhythm plays in your chest. Step inside. The air is warm and heavy, not foul, exactly but earthy, full of rot and ancient wood polish. Incense burns in the corner, perhaps to honor Closina, goddess of the sewer, or perhaps just to mask the persistent tang of human biology. You take a breath. Try not to gag to your left. Someone chuckles, a quip low and oily. Careful which. Stone you choose, friend. Some of them bite. You laugh politely, but your knees tense. It's not that you're scared of the lavatory. You're scared of what might happen here because everyone knows Rome's public toilets are not just places of relief. They're battlegrounds of whispers, ambushes, and humiliations. Once, this exact room saw a senator accused of treason. After a toilet encounter with a disgruntled tribune, the accusation: he conspired while mid-wipe. Historians still argue whether that tribunal had political merit or was just the result of a deeply unfortunate coincidence. You choose a seat carefully centered row, not too exposed, not too secluded. The stone is cold. The hole below gurgles. Gently water, murmuring in the dark like a half-sleeping beast. You try not to imagine anything alive in there. You're not alone, neither physically nor spiritually. Romans believed spirits dwelt in all corners, especially where things ... exited. Someone sneezes. You mutter, Salus sit tibi under your breath. Old habits. Your eyes adjust to the dim light. Across from you, carved into the stone wall, is graffiti. Marcus talks big, but farts bigger. Classic. Another reads, Livia loves Livia. Self-love in ancient Rome. How modern. You shift. The spongianistic or tersorium leans beside you, resting in a trough of vinegar water. You grimace? Sanitary? Perhaps comforting? Not remotely. Stories circle about intestinal parasites climbing up from the used sponges and making their homes inside well-fed senators. Worms, they say. They grow fat and wriggly from wine-soaked guts. Fringe rumor? Sure. But are you about to be the next host? Better not press your luck. A muffled splash echoes down the row. You pretend not to hear it. Someone clears their throat purposefully. It's a signal, maybe. An opening or warning. Senators are never off duty. Even here, conversations tiptoe between pleasantries and veiled threats. You remember a tale? One man made the mistake of mocking a rival's proposal during a shared bathroom session. A week later, he was accused of impiety. The proof? None. Of course, but what did it matter? The stink clung either way. Your own body hesitates. This is no place for comfort. It's a place for performance of silence, of stillness, of absolute discretion. A rat scurries behind the column. You jump slightly. A chuckle from down the line. Someone whispers, "Don't worry. That one's a senator, too." Jokes help. A little, you focus on the mosaics. One shows a winged man pouring water into a basin, his expression blank. Maybe he's bored. Maybe he's judging you. Or maybe he's just tired of being a bathroom angel for 200 years. You sigh. In a city of marble and conquest, even this moment feels like theater. And not all performances end in applause. You lean back ever so slightly, just enough to feel the edge of the stone pressing against your thighs. There's no privacy here, no cubicles, no helpful jingles or flushing sounds to cover awkward silences. Just you, your thoughts, and the ever-present possibility of disaster. Across from you, two senators engage in a whisper battle. Their mouths barely move, but their eyes dart like dueling eagles. One of them, Lucius maybe, or was it Publius, glances at you. Brief, calculating. You stare back at the mosaics, pretending to admire a chipped dolphin, trying to ignore the shift in the atmosphere. Whispers. That's where it starts.
Always.
You hear them behind you, beyond the next archwards, floating on steam from the nearby baths. Did you hear about Gaius? They say he was caught on the wrong bench, with the wrong man? A soft snort, a knowing pause, then quiet, heavy with implication. It doesn't take much. It's a misheard sentence, an ambiguous look, and suddenly your name's on someone's lips for all the wrong reasons. And in a city where alliances are as thin as your sandals, one whisper can mean exile, or worse. You adjust your toga, carefully. The wrong movement might suggest nerves, or guilt, or constipation, which, in some social circles, is just as embarrassing. This is why some senators avoid the latrines entirely. They pace their diets, bribe their bowels with honeyed figs at the right hour, all to avoid doing their business among colleagues. But even then, sometimes you just have to go. And when you do, you weigh every factor. Time of day, who's likely to be there. Whether you have any enemies currently attending bathhouse politics, or if anyone's recently accused you of skimming temple donations. Because yes, people have been stabbed here. One account admittedly suspect tells of a minor noble who sat too long on a seat still warm from arrival. The next morning, he was found in the Tiber, face down, with a sponge in his mouth. Historians still argue whether this tale was state-sponsored rumor, folk revenge fantasy, or an unusually dramatic case of hygiene gone wrong. You shift again. The stone's not any warmer. Someone to your left gets up, adjusts his robe and tosses you a small nod as he leaves. Friendly? Threatening? You don't know anymore? Every nod could mean, I trust you, or you're next. You remember what your grandfather said when you joined the Senate. Keep your enemies close, and your enemies. Sponges closer. You had laughed then. You're not laughing now. To be fair, the latrine does serve a vital civic function. Rome's public sanitation system, including the mighty Cloaca Maxima, is genuinely ahead of its time. Waste is swept away by flowing water. And the engineer's brilliant, obsessive types boast about how many modius buckets per hour the system can handle. There are even gods and goddesses for it. Clocina, we mentioned, but also lesser spirits of drainage and flow. Rome, after all, worships what it fears, and fear. Well, that's in every corner here. You glance at the sponge trough again. Vinegar water is murky, slightly pink, maybe from rose petals, or maybe not. It's traditional to share the sponge. Theoretically, in practice, most senators bring their own, kept in a tiny bag, tucked discreetly under their robe. You pretend yours is for handkerchiefs. Everyone does. No one's buying it. The man beside you lets out a long sigh. One of those I'm totally relaxed and not planning your downfall sighs. You match it with a sigh of your own. The political theater continues. In the outer chamber, you hear a laugh. Loud. Too loud. Laughter near the latrine always raises. Suspicion. What's so funny exactly? Did someone slip? Say something compromising? Do you just become the punchline of a joke told between wipes? You'll never know. That's the horror of it. You try to breathe evenly. Don't rush. Don't linger. The unspoken rule is, stay too short, and people think you're running from something. Stay too long, and you're clearly up to something. You think of the poet Juvenal, centuries from now, who will mock Roman elite for their anxieties over bowel movements. He'll say, they fear poison and figs, plots and perfume and betrayal. While squatting, he's not wrong. It's not entirely. And then there's the scrawlings. Every wall here is lined with graffiti, some vulgar, some oddly poetic. One reads, "Here sat the mighty, now reduced to gas and rumor." Another, "May the gods grant me silence and dry feet." One even lists Senate names crossed out, a bathroom kill list, or just adolescent mischief. Either way, you make a mental note of the names. It's just in case. Behind you, footsteps echo. Heavy ones, possibly military sandals. That's not good. Military means power, blunt and unrefined.
Oh, yeah.
Soldiers aren't known for subtlety. One brush with the wrong shoulder, and your next Senate session could include an awkward inquiry into who last insulted the commander's hygiene. The person doesn't sit, just stands. Waiting, you begin to wrap up discreetly. Movements efficient, but not hurried. Every action calculated to project just the right balance of dignity and indifference. As you rise, you hear a soft voice. "Careful, Senator. Some things don't wash off." You don't look back. You step out onto the stone threshold. The shift from the stuffy latrine air to the open corridor, strangely refreshing. Like stepping out of a political bear trap and into a slightly less dangerous hallway. The warm sunlight doesn't reach here, but there's airflow enough to feel your robes flutter as you exhale. It's if your body finally believes it might have survived another visit. You don't relax yet. The architecture around you is deceptively beautiful. Domed ceilings decorated, with painted vines, marble columns kissed with golden veins, and mosaics of peacocks and laurels beneath your feet. It all suggests serenity, harmony. But as any senator knows, this space is designed with more than just decoration in mind. There's a theory, you've heard it whispered during banquets and over cheap wine, that Roman communal latrines weren't just hygienic marvels. They were traps. Political traps. The open design, the acoustics, the shadows behind columns, all perfect for what polite society calls unexpected outcomes. Architects never confirmed this theory, but historians still argue whether the latrine layout stone benches curved just enough to limit peripheral vision. Alcoves conveniently shadowed, water channels deep enough to conceal more than waste was coincidence or quiet statecraft. The bench spacing again, a little too perfect. If you were to duck behind that curved wall to the left, yes, right there, you'd be almost invisible. If you had a dagger in your sandal and a grudge, you could be in and out before the victim's tunic even settled back over their knees. There was one case. You recall a praetor named Gellius who disappeared. Just vanished? The only clue? A smear of blood near the east latrine?
Ow.
No body, no witnesses. Only the quiet, sluggish current of the Cloaca Maxima, flowing south like nothing ever happened. The water underneath the latrines runs constantly, carrying waste and possibly secrets into the city's larger sewer system. But that system isn't all pipes and water. There are corners down there, niches, chambers where things could be stored or hidden. Some even say entire families lived in the Undercity once, banished for crimes or born into shadow. And if someone really wanted to disappear, well, the underbelly of Rome is vast. You remember a rumor from your youth, that of the Flusher, a silent assassin who waited in the sewage tunnels, striking from beneath with a sharpened gladius and the timing of a viper. No proof, of course, but the tale kept young patricians alert when nature called. Of course, not every danger comes with a blade. You pass by the maintenance alcove, where two slaves in plain tunics are discussing repairs. One of them is pointing to a diagram of the water system, the other nodding slowly, eyes flicking up at you as you pass. The diagram shows chambers, tunnels, overflow routes, a whole map of the latrine's guts. You consider bribing them. For mischief, just precautions. Maybe get a private heads up if someone alters the plumbing or hides something behind a loose tile. This wouldn't be the first time. There's that story, half myth, half cautionary tale of a senator who tried to rig the sponge trough with herbs to cause intestinal discomfort for anyone not aligned with his vote. The theory was to create just enough gastric urgency that a few key voices would have to excuse themselves before the roll call. Brilliant in its own way, it worked. Until someone traced the scent to a rare plant only grown on the senator's own estate. Oops, you move on. Another hallway leads to a more secluded lavatory. Fewer seats, more privacy, supposedly for the higher echelons of the elite. But here's the problem. More privacy often means fewer witnesses. And fewer witnesses make accidents far easier to fabricate. And what counts as an accident? A slip on a damp tile. A fall from the bench. A sponge containing something less than sanitary. The possibilities are endless and delightfully deniable. You duck under an arch and find yourself in a niche surrounded by faded frescoes. One depicts a goddess, possibly Venus, holding a pitcher over a kneeling man. Her face is serene, his is contorted. Interpretation is, as always, up for debate. And that's the heart of it, isn't it? Everything here is up for interpretation. A cough, a delay, a sidelong glance as someone exits before washing their hands. It's all a code, and the code keeps changing. You sit again. Not to relieve yourself, but to observe. Space is different here. Quieter, fewer footsteps, more control. You understand why some senators favor it. But control comes with risk. The wall behind you hums softly. Just the sound of flowing water, probably, or the wind through the drain vents, unless someone's crawling behind the plaster. Stranger things have happened. You rest your palms on your knees, posture calm. You watch. As a younger senator enters nervous, unsure, you remember being him, eyes darting, steps hesitant. He picks the third bench from the left. Bold choice, slightly exposed. He fumbles with his robe, makes the classic mistake looking around too often. You wonder if he knows the story of the aqueduct engineer who sat there once, claimed the stones whispered to him, lost his mind after a week. Said the gods of the sewer demanded sacrifices. The same seat, too? Coincidence? Perhaps, but as your hand brushes the edge of the stone, you feel a faint groove. A carving worn by time. You squint. It reads, "All thrones have shadows." Indeed. Your fingers linger over the groove. All thrones have shadows. Feels like a message just for you, whispered across time from one wary senator to another. A reminder that no seat of power, no matter how porcelain its promises or marble its frame, is ever without danger lurking beneath. As you rise from the bench once more, you're acutely aware of your back, of the silence behind you, of the emptiness of the hallway. You tighten your robe, not just for modesty, but as armor. The toga, silly as it may seem with its folds and drapes, is all that stands between you and the sharp intentions of others. Because in Rome, politics doesn't pause for digestion. Cloaks conceal more than tunics. Daggers, bribes, secret documents, they all fit snugly into the folds. And where better to pass them unnoticed than in a place where no one dares stare too long. The latrine is one of Rome's busiest, unguarded exchanges, where a long pause or bent knee is natural camouflage for treachery. Pass by a man you recognize, Senator Drusus, a quiet type, always polite, always forgettable, which is precisely why you don't trust him. The forgettable ones are often the best listeners. And this one never seems to sweat even in summer. That alone is suspicious. He smiles. "Good morning." Colleague you nod. "May it pass quickly." He chuckles, the joke registering on both the sanitary and political spectrum. You keep walking as you re-enter the main corridor. The chatter returns. Gentle echoes of water, voices, sandals on stone. You find yourself analyzing footsteps. Is that a limp? An urgency? Are those two people walking in rhythm? Or did one speed up to catch the other? A group of 3 senators round the corner, robes flowing, their voices drop when they see you. It's just for a second, but that second is enough. You file it away like all good politicians do. One of them is Senator Tullis. He's been proposing new sewer legislation, something about privatized maintenance. It sounds innocent, even dull, but everyone knows it's a power grab. Control the sanitation, control the streets. Control the streets, and you can control the people. After all, nothing motivates a citizen quite like the promise of clean walkways and stink-free breezes. But what you remember most about Tullis isn't his legislation, it's the duel he orchestrated. Years ago, in this very latrine, two of his opponents happened to collide. One accused the other of spreading rumors. Tempers flared, robes were yanked, sponge was thrown. 2 days later, one of them was dead. The other retired to the countryside, citing nerves, and Tullis gained 2 committee seats. You stop at a basin near the exit. A young boy barefoot, tunic smeared with oil, offers you a cloth and a drop of scented water. You nod and take it, wiping your hands with ceremonial caution. Your fingertips are sore. You don't remember clenching them, probably from gripping the bench too tightly. "Senator," the boy says softly, "you dropped this." He hands you a folded parchment, but you didn't drop anything. You unfold it, heart thumping. It's a note written in hurried Latin. 4 words: "Tonight, Garden of Salus." No signature. You look up. The boy's already gone, weaving into a crowd of tradesmen and bath attendants. Was he sent? Was he a pickpocket trying to confuse you? Or was that note meant for someone else entirely? You tuck it into your sleeve. It could be a trap. It could also be a lead. One of your informants mentioned unusual activity near the Temple of Salus. Last week, whispers of a new faction forming. Idealists or fools. Sometimes the line blurs. You pass back through the latrine on your return route. You tell yourself, it's to save time, but really, you want to see who else is lingering. Information gathers like mildew in these chambers, slowly, quietly, and only in damp places. 2 men are talking near the sponge trough. Not senators' clients, maybe? Middle class? Types you can tell by the leather straps on their sandals and the way they leave their hands visible. The poor learn to be seen. The powerful learn to disappear. One of them says they found another cursed tablet. You slow your step. In the drain behind the east seat, the other whispers, inscribed in lead, said something about choking. On figs, you raise an eyebrow. Cursed tablets. Again, there's been a spike lately. Little lead scrolls tossed into latrines, meant to summon spirits or bind enemies with intestinal doom. They're anonymous, of course, hidden in waste, but real enough to cause unrest. A few even name senators directly. Scholars will later debate whether these curses held legal weight or were just the ancient Roman equivalent of passive-aggressive emails. You've seen one up close before. Pulled from the sewer grate behind your villa, it read, "Let Marcus's tongue swell like a rotten fig." You didn't know a Marcus, but you checked your figs carefully for weeks. You keep moving. Shadows here grow darker the longer you linger. Back outside, the sun is brighter than you remember. Your eyes squint as you emerge from the tiled gloom. Feels like waking from a strange dream, the kind where toilets have teeth and mosaics whisper secrets. You adjust your sash. Just another trip to the latrine. Just another day in Rome. Back in the Forum, with your sandals clicking against sun-warmed stone. It's almost easy to forget where you just were almost. But the latrine lingers in your nose, the edge of your thoughts, like the smell of wet marble and faint anxiety. You pass by a statue of a stoic-faced senator, eternally frozen in oration. His finger points outward, as if warning passers-by. But you know the man he's modeled after died not in battle or debate, but in the public latrine of the baths of Agrippa. Mid-sentence, trousers tangled, legacy unfinished. They say he choked. On his own arrogance or perhaps on someone else's political ambition. Now he's commemorated in stone. Surrounded by pigeons, you turn a corner. Tracing a path past market stalls and incense vendors, and you remember the real weapons senators. Feared in the lavatory. Words, not steel. Not even poison. Words, whispered. Or rhymed, were the real killers. Rome's satirists had sharp tongues and even sharper styluses, and the latrine walls were their scrolls. The greatest insult wasn't to be slain, was to be remembered for the wrong reason, immortalized in verse scribbled beside someone's bodily functions. You think of Catullus, who once likened a rival's breath to a latrine, sponge left out in summer, harsh, hilarious, and absolutely unforgettable. You've seen? Your own name once thankfully misspelled, alongside a crude drawing of a donkey and a toga. You pretended not to notice. What else could you do? Declare a duel in the lavatory? Sad truth is, even a whisper that you were seen reacting to graffiti can spread faster than a plague. A smile might mean guilt. A frown could mean recognition. Neutrality is your best disguise. Historians still argue whether the satirical graffiti in Roman latrines was the voice of the oppressed or just ancient trolling. Some claim it was a secret language among the slaves. Others think it was senators, themselves indulging in midnight jabs between votes. You're not sure? But you know this. It has power. A friend once lost an appointment to a provincial governorship over a poem. 8 lines, badly written, but it rhymed his name with spoiled fish. That was enough. The rumor stuck. Korea didn't. You walk past the Senate steps, your fingers tracing the edge of a column as your mind drifts. Maybe that's why the latrines feel so risky. Not just because of what you leave behind, but because you can't control what stays. And if someone with a flair for rhyme takes a disliking to you, well, that's a stink you can't wash off. There's one particularly infamous piece of graffiti. Etched just outside the latrine at the Temple of Vesta, beware the senator who eats figs. For he speaks, his words are sweet, but his bowels deceive. Survived earthquakes, renovations, and at least one murder trial. Why? Because it's just vague enough to apply to anyone, and just clever enough that everyone wants to believe it's about someone they don't like. You reach your favorite tavern. Nothing fancy. It's just a shaded courtyard and a wine list that doesn't try too hard. The owner nods at you as you sit. As the slave pours your drink, you lean back and watch the street. Life continues, vendors haggling, children chasing each other with sticks, soldier half asleep on a step. But you're still thinking. About the walls. The words, you've considered leaving something of your own behind. A little line. A message. Maybe not today. Maybe not even this week. But one day you'll carve something not about enemies or bodily functions, but about survival. Something like, he who sits silently survives the stink. Too dramatic? Maybe. But then again, so is Rome. Your wine arrives. It's sharp. Probably watered down. You don't complain? Your mind wanders back to that note. The one the boy gave you. Tonight, Garden of Salus. You trace the memory of the handwriting in your mind. Rushed. Slanted. Not official, but intentional. The Garden of Salus is halfway across the city. Near the Aventine Hill. Officially, it's a place of healing, dedicated to the goddess of safety and well-being. Ironically, it's also known for its rumors, particularly those whispered near the medicinal herb beds. Senators meet there when they don't want their names recorded. When the latrine's too risky and the temple's too holy, you'll go. Of course you'll go. What other choice do you have? But you'll take the long route. That circled the baths. Pass through the meat market. Let anyone watching think you're just restless. Because if someone's paying attention, you want them to see what you want them to see. You drink slowly. Time passes. You feel the familiar tug in your belly. Too much wine, not enough bread. You'll need to relieve yourself again soon. And the nearest public latrine, just around the corner, you sigh. Of course it is. You adjust your sash, stand, and return to the shadows once more. The shadows greet you like old friends, cool and familiar, wrapping around your sandals as you step down the slope toward the latrine once more. This one's smaller than the last, just 8 seats, tucked in a stone alcove behind a bakery. The air spiced faintly with yesterday's burnt barley loaves and a hint of dried sweat. But make no mistake, danger doesn't scale with grandeur. You pause just outside the entrance. A breeze slips through the stone arch, fluttering the fringe of your toga. carries with it a musty undertone, something between wet limestone and old decisions. You recognize the smell. It's the smell of Rome itself, beautiful, complicated, and slightly unsanitary. You listen first. Always listen. Inside, a muffled cough, the scratch of sandal soles shifting. Someone whispers in a language you don't immediately recognize, could be Thracian, or a badly pronounced dialect from the Sabine Hills. You wait until it fades. Then you enter. This latrine is dimly lit, as expected. A few oil lamps flicker along the wall, casting gold puddles across the mosaic floor. The artwork here is simpler, just swirls and dots, like someone lost their artistic nerve halfway through. The benches curve along one side, raised just above a sluggish water trench. You count 6 occupied seats. Most heads are down. Eyes fixed ahead or blank. There's a quiet etiquette here. No introductions. No greetings. Eye contact is frowned upon unless you're looking to start something or end something. You choose your seat, not the center, not the edge. Slightly right of center. The zone of practiced indifference to your left. An older man with sagging jowls grips the edge of his stone perch with white knuckles. His feet twitch now and then, as if rehearsing a line of defense he hopes he never has to use. On your right, a slave. By the calluses and the soot smeared on his forearms, he's a baker's assistant. It's probably sent here between kneading sessions. Neither is a threat, probably. But there's a figure farther down, half-shadowed, robe pulled low. He's not seated. He's watching. That alone breaks the code. You glance his way. He doesn't look away. Just tilts his head, ever so slightly, as if making a mental note about your posture, or your expression, or your worth. You tighten your jaw, then deliberately turn back toward the mosaic. A single dot of red stone forms the center of a blue spiral beneath your feet. You fix your gaze on it. Pretend it's the only thing that matters. Because here, your focus is your shield. That figure might be a spy, or an informant, or maybe just someone waiting for his preferred bench. You'll never know, because you'll never ask. That's part of the game. Rome's latrines are a theater of silence. And everyone's an actor? You shift slightly and hear the gentle burble of the water below. The cloaca miner, probably. Side stream. Not as famous as the Maxima, but just as hard-working. Historians still argue whether this entire latrine network was designed primarily for sanitation or for social management. After all, when you make people relieve themselves in public, you control how they behave. You make them aware of each other. Vulnerable. Invulnerability. In Rome is currency. Suddenly, a small metal ping echoes from somewhere under the stone. Not loud, not sharp. Just enough to startle. Heads rise. Eyes flick. You stay still. The noise came from the troughs, something metallic falling into the water. Could be a coin, could be a ring, could be something more dangerous, a hidden message. Slip through a drain for someone waiting downstream. The shadowed figure shifts and leaves. Without a word, you exhale slowly. The old man beside you mutters under his breath, something about bad luck. The baker's assistant coughs twice, spits into the drain, stands to leave. The room is quieter now. You wipe your hands on your own cloth, never use the communal sponge. Not if you value your insides in rise. But you don't leave just. Yet, instead, you approach the sponge trough and peer inside. The water's cloudy, but slow-moving. You spot something shiny, a coin, probably. Bronze, common, but nearby. Tucked into the crevice, where stone meets clay, is a scrap of parchment, just barely visible, curled and damp. You don't touch it. Not yet. You crouch. One hand adjusting your sandal strap, covering the other hand as it slides the scrap free. It's blank on one side. On the other, a crude drawing, square with a line through it. And a symbol you recognize, the sigil used by some factions within the populares. The reform-minded political movement that's been trying to stir the lower classes. Interesting. They're usually smarter than to leave messages in public waste. Or maybe that's exactly why they did. You fold the parchment and tuck it away. Then you exit as you step out into the sun again. The warmth feels almost wrong. You blink at the sudden brightness. Everything here is loud again. Shouting vendors. The clang of bronze coins. The bleating of a goat tied to a column for reasons that no one has probably questioned in years. But your mind is still back there, in the echoing shadows. You remember a story, one of Rome's early censors. Once claimed to have discovered a plot to poison the city's water supply using lead. Cursed tablets flushed en masse into the cloaca. The plot never materialized, or if it did, the proof was swallowed by the sewers. But ever since then, some say, the latrines hum louder after midnight, as if they're whispering secrets or warnings. You pass a column with fresh graffiti. 2. Pee in silence is to plot in peace. You smirk. It's a good line.
Ah, you almost wish you'd written it yourself.
The sun climbs lazily across the Roman sky as you make your way through the winding back alleys near the Suburra. You're not headed anywhere in particular, at least not on paper. You're killing time before your meeting in the Garden of Salus. Or, more accurately, you're giving the illusion that you aren't being followed. Your eyes scan casually, watching reflections in puddles, shadows that don't match the pace of their owners. So far, nothing out of place. Just the usual flurry of vendors hawking everything from olives to aphrodisiacs, children darting under carts, and one elderly woman shouting at a chicken like it owed her money. But your mind is back in the latrine you can't shake. At that scrap of parchment, that strange little sigil. You've seen it before, haven't you? Somewhere less moist and more dangerous. It was scrawled onto a wax tablet a few months ago. I found on a client of yours who ended up exiled after a highly creative accusation of temple theft. That tablet had been destroyed. Of course, but you remember the design, and you remember. What followed? A rash of sickness swept through certain elite circles. Stomach cramps, fatigue, rumors that a contaminated tersorium had been passed around intentionally. Historians still argue whether this was a political act or a terrible lapse in cleaning protocol. But among senators, it became legend. The curse of the shared sponge. You veer into a shaded portico, pretending to admire a frieze depicting the goddess Flora seducing a vine. The stone is chipped. The proportions off. Flora looks like she might have 3 elbows, but it gives you a moment to think. Parasites. That was the other theory. That Rome's greatest leveler wasn't democracy, or the mob, but intestinal worms. The latrines were prime territory for infestation. Even with the vinegar baths and the flowing water, it wasn't enough. Parasites thrived, and some senators, those with more wealth than wisdom, refused to use the public facilities entirely, opting instead for imported Egyptian chamber pots and slave-emptied stools. You remember a man, Lucius Calpurnius, who once lectured the Senate for 3 hours on the importance of intestinal hygiene? He died 3 weeks later of what was delicately described as an unfortunate internal eruption. No one mourned him particularly hard. There's a theory, passed around the quieter symposiums, that the parasites don't just infest bodies, they infest legacies. That a senator who becomes too bloated with ambition, too full of himself, invites the worms. And the worms remember it's nonsense, of course. But still, you've adjusted your fig intake ever since. You continue walking. A small street dog trots past you with the confidence of someone who pays no taxes and fears no judgment. You admire that. A new latrine looms ahead, tucked discreetly between 2 wine shops. You don't plan to go in? Not now, but something draws you close. The structure is newer, the stone still pale, the carving around the entry arch still sharp via and laurels, twined together with symbols of the water goddesses. There's a bronze plaque near the entrance. A dedication from a wealthy freedwoman named Livia Severa. You've heard of her? Former slave, now landowner? She donated the latrine to the people of the Aventine. It's a noble gesture, but also strategic. Control over a public facility means influence. Influence over who lingers, who leaves. Messages, who overhears what. You peer inside, clean, well-lit, and already 3 men seated. One of them, curiously, holds a writing stylus. He's scratching at a wax tablet even as he squats, efficient if unorthodox. You imagine a future historian discovering that tablet, puzzling over whether the contents were philosophical, financial, or simply bowel-related. Behind the benches, a trough runs with clear water. Alongside it, vinegar pots. 2 of them, unlabeled. That's odd. Most latrines, especially new ones, label. It's a cleansing sponges for fresh and used. Here, they're indistinguishable. A small thing. But in Rome, small things have a habit of turning fatal. You glance up. An inscription on the wall reads, Closina watches. So should you. Another nod to the sewer goddess. Another reminder that nothing here is private. Not your seat. Not your soul. You don't enter. Not this time. Instead, you continue on toward the garden. The streets narrow. The noise dulls. The air thickens with the scent of sage and rosemary medicinal. Herbs grown by the temple of Salus. But before the trees come into view, you pass a final stalla, cellar of dried herbs and charms. The woman manning it is ancient. So old she might have seen Romulus himself squabble over latrine policy. She eyes you, not kindly, not unkindly. Just knowingly, she reaches beneath her counter and produces a small clay amulet, presses it into your hand, says nothing. On it, etched in worn strokes, is the sigil from the parchment. You glance up. She's already turned away. You pocket the charm and walk on. The latrines may be behind you for now, but their shadow stretches long. Parasites, curses, secrets, sigils. You once thought politics lived in the Senate. Now you note festers in the drains. By the time you reach the edge of the Garden of Salus, twilight is softening the city's sharper angles. The heat of the day has retreated into the cracks of the stone walls, and a gentle breeze carries the crisp scent of bay laurel and crushed. Time from the temple gardens. You pause beneath a fig tree, letting your heart beat slow. The shadows here are less suspicious, more natural long branches casting dappled shapes over the gravel paths, like sleepy gods tracing fingers across the earth. It's quiet, but not empty. 2 older women sit beneath an arbor, weaving garlands of myrtle. A boy chases a cricket through the grass. And further along the path, a pair of figures exchange words in low voices beside a marble statue of Salus, her self-goddess of safety and public well-being, a fitting patron for what's about to happen. You move slowly, let the gravel crunch. Under your sandals just enough to announce your presence without appearing intentional, one of the figures breaks away. A woman, late 30s, early 40s, plain robes, worn sandals, and a face you almost recognize but can't quite place. She gestures you toward a stone bench beneath a cedar. You sit, leaving just enough space to imply cautious curiosity. No names, she says softly. Just truth. That's rarely a good sign. She pulls something from her robe, a thin lead tablet, the kind used for curses. But this one isn't rolled. It's flat. Displayed like a statement, you glance down. Etched into it, in tight script, is a prayer. May the mouths of liars be filled with ash, and their secrets seep through the sewers. You raise an eyebrow. It's not a curse, she explains. It's a warning about what's coming. Of course it is. You lean in slightly, partly for privacy. It's partly because your curiosity has finally outrun your caution. She continues. There's a group. They call themselves the Clocari. Small for now. Focused on exposing Senate corruption through the sewers. You stifle a laugh. Not because it's absurd it is, but because it's also entirely Roman. A rebellion launched from the latrines. Of course, they've started placing charms, she says. Amulets, notes, infected sponges, even though that might be rumor. Ew. Think of the sigil. It's the strange charm the herb seller gave you, the drawing found by the trough. You're already tangled in this, whether you like it or not. What do they want? She smiles, but there's no humor in it. Accountability, it's transparency, and, apparently, cleaner sponges. You look away toward the statue of Salus. Her marble eyes gaze eternally upward, as if even she's tired of being invoked by both sides of every conflict. Why tell me? You ask, because you're on no one's side. That makes you useful. You don't argue. She's not wrong. You've survived Rome not by choosing sides, but by understanding where they overlap, where they crumble. She slips the lead tablet back into her robe and stands. They'll contact you again, she says, probably in a place less fragrant. She walks off into the garden, becoming just another silhouette among the olive trees. You remain seated. Let the dusk settle around you. Few stars blink above the rooftops. Stray cat wanders along the garden wall. You think about what she said about the cloakari, about truth rising from the sewer. There's an irony there, that in a city built on conquest, marble, and might, the most dangerous truths ferment in the filth. That the same water meant to wash away the waste of Rome might soon carry the downfall of its senators. Historians still argue whether the cloakari ever truly existed. Some call them a myth fear-mongering invented by elite senators to justify tighter control over public sanitation. Others claim they were real, and that their messages influenced key reforms decades later. No one agrees, but the evidence. It's in the cracks, the amulets, the tablets, the graffiti that suddenly turned political. Even in the way some senators mysteriously avoided the latrines altogether during certain months, as if they'd been warned. You rise, brushing stray leaves from your robe, and begin your walk home. The streets are quieter now. Torches flicker behind shuttered windows. Drunks sing softly in an alley. Somewhere a lyre strums a lullaby, the notes drifting like smoke through the dark. As you cross a footbridge over one of the smaller sewage channels, you pause. The water below burbles gently, carrying its invisible cargo toward the Tiber. You imagine secrets floating past names. Threats, curses, carved in lead, and flushed from the world above. And you wonder, maybe the real fear Roman senators had in those latrines wasn't just the sponge, or the whispers, or the daggers in the dark. Maybe it was that. In those quiet moments of forced vulnerability, something ancient looked back at them from the depths, something that saw through to the truth. Beneath their robes, not a god, not a rebel, just consequence. You walk on. Morning comes slower in Rome, when you've spent the night thinking about sewers. Your villa, modest by senatorial standards, is still cloaked in shade as the city yawns to life. Birds sing, slaves shuffle through morning duties. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor's dog is barking at an amphora, as if it owes him an explanation. You lie on your side, staring at the ceiling, where a painted cupid chases a duck with alarming determination. Your mind, however, is already underfoot. The cloakari, the sigils, the woman in the garden, the warning scrawled in sewage. You sit up slowly, joints complaining, and reach for your sandals. Time to act like none of it happened. But before your second sandal is strapped, a rustle at the doorway. House slave, wide-eyed, letter master. He says, offering a wax-sealed scroll. No name, no seal. You open it. One line etched in an unfamiliar hand. Let those who drain the filth drink from it. Poetic, concerning, vague. Your 3 least favorite adjectives. You rub your temples. The gods really need new hobbies. You tuck the scroll away and head to the tablinum to review documents for the day. Senate session looms, with a rather bland docket. Grain subsidies, aqueduct repairs, and ironically a motion to revise public hygiene ordinances. Funny how fate has a nose for timing. As you unroll your meeting notes, another paper slips free. Not yours. It's older, spotted with damp. Another lead-cursed tablet. No, it's parchment, but similar. And scribbled across it in faint ink is a list of named 6 senators. 2 you know well. 1 you've shared a bench with recently, a latrine, and next to each name is a symbol. Not check marks, not crosses, sponges, some soaked, some clean. You stare, it's a hit list, in the most Roman way possible. But what does it mean? Are the soaked ones marked for ruin? Already ruined? Is someone tracking who uses which sponge? You're interrupted by a knock at the gate. Not a visitor. A magistrate's runner, delivering a summons. Urgent debate, he says. Committee on Public Sanitation. You're not sure whether to laugh or vomit. Regardless, duty calls. You dress with more care than usual. Neutral colors. Nothing flashy. Just another senator in the machine. But as you fasten your fibula, you slip the parchment of names into your sleeve, not because you plan to act on it, because you need to know, if anyone else already has. The Senate House is buzzing when you arrive. Not in the good, productive way, but in the everyone knows something and no one's saying it way. Cloaks rustle, glances dart. A few senators make a show of laughing too loudly. It's always a giveaway. Then you hear it, one of the names from the list. Vitellius has taken ill, publicly, dramatically. Right in the middle of the morning bread distribution speech, collapsed, clutching his gut. Rumor has it he'd used the forum's public latrine that very morning. Some say poison, others whisper of parasites. One particularly unhelpful observer blamed divine justice. You keep your face still, as though it's carved in marble, because Vitellius was on the list. And beside his name, soaked sponge, you attend the sanitation debate without really hearing it. Words swirl around: effluence rates, drainage channel capacity, sponge vinegar concentration guidelines. You nod in the right places, speak only when required, and avoid eye contact with the more enthusiastic reformers. But your mind is elsewhere. The cloakary aren't just theorists anymore, they're acting, whether through curses, contamination, or coincidence. They're sending a message, and it's not subtle. The real question is, how many know about them? Because if the whispers have started higher among the robed elite, then others are listening. Others are watching the drains, not just to avoid rats or foul smells, but to read the stories they carry. There's an old superstition among Rome's lowest classes that sewage remembers, that every secret tossed into the flow lingers a little, longer than it should, that even lead tablets and half-rotted gossip rise again, like bones during a flood. You used to laugh at that, you don't anymore. At recess, you slip away from the crowd. Not out of fear, but calculation. You make your way toward a smaller, little loose latrine near the Temple of Janus. It's a quiet spot, mostly forgotten. It's the kind of place where secrets are dropped like coins into a well. You enter, no one inside. You kneel not to use the bench, to check beneath it. And there, tucked behind a loose tile near the floor, you find it. Another charm. This one made of clay, shaped like a sponge. Crude, symbolic, and tied to it with twine. A scrap of papyrus. 3 are marked. 1 is spared. Do you wash, or do you watch? No signature? Of course, but now the implication is clear. You're being invited, or tested. Possibly both. You rise, heart pounding with something between fear and amusement. You're not a hero, you're not a revolutionary, but you are awake. That's dangerous enough. The latrines are no longer just utilities, or battlegrounds. The question is, which side of the drain do you stand on? You leave the quiet latrine with its cryptic sponge charm still tucked under your sleeve. The sun's overhead now, beating down on rooftops and turning every cobblestone into a stovetop. Rome simmers, not just with heat, but with something. Less visible and far more volatile. The city is a belly full of tension. Someone's stirring the gut. You walk slowly, retracing your steps, toward the forum, but your thoughts are not on politics or policies. They're on whispers. On what? Lingers in water. On the way, secrets move, trickling, leaking, staining. You're reminded of something an old philosopher once muttered at a drunken banquet. Every civilization is just one blocked sewer from collapse. At the time, it was funny. Now, less. So, you take a back route. One that winds between bakeries and dye shops. The air thick with yeast and vinegar. Your sandals stick slightly with every step. Someone's spilled wine or blood, or something that's lost its name, and then you see it. A slave pouring a bucket of wastewater to a great, normal, ordinary, unremarkable. Till you notice the glint, floating barely visible in the murky. Stream is a curled strip of lead, a tablet. Gone in an instant, swallowed by the grate. You lunge forward, pretending to trip, peering down into the darkness. No luck, it's gone. But that flash was enough. Another message. Another warning. Maybe a name. You dust off your robes and move on. But you can't unsee it. The messages are everywhere now. You just weren't looking before. You pass a stall selling amulet sigh-shaped pendants. Wooden phalluses, bundles of herbs wrapped in red thread. Protective charms against envy, against illness, against betrayal. One catches your eye. It's shaped like a drain cover. You stare. The seller grins, gap-toothed. Good for the house. Keeps misfortune flowing out, not in. You ask, "Where did you get the design?" He shrugs. People ask. Make, then lowers his voice. New trend. Very popular with clerks. Clerks, the lowest rungs of the bureaucratic ladder. It's the ones who handle scrolls, clean ink pots, track votes. If they're buying sewer charms, then something is definitely moving under the surface. You continue on, heart tight. At the forum, crowds have thinned for midday. The stone bleachers shimmer with heat. A few senators remain, clustered like pigeons in patches of shade. Pecking at olives and gossip, you make your way toward the curia, passing under an archway carved with triumphal scenesmen in chariots. Chained barbarians, all the usual nonsense. But behind the glory, you catch a glimpse of something scrawled into the mortar. Very faint, barely visible. 3 words. Even marble leaks. Your feet slow. Your eyes dart. No one else reacts. Perhaps no one else has seen it. It's clever. It's terrifying. It's true. You enter the Senate House with a different kind of caution, now not the usual wariness of rivals, but the sense that the walls themselves are listening. That even the marble long used to posture and pontification has begun to crack. Inside, a minor debate rages about sewer funding. You take your seat, speakers droning about aqueduct runoff, but your attention slides to the slaves refilling. Ink pots at the rear bench. One of them is marking something into the wax logbook with his left hand. You notice because it's not usual. Most write right-handed. He catches you watching, doesn't flinch, just blinks. Once then he turns the page. 2. Casual. Too smooth. Historians still argue whether the Clocari infiltrated Roman record-keeping. If they did, it wasn't through brute force. It was through the hands no one watched. The assistants. The scribes. The water-bearers, who overheard oaths. Spoken during urination, you make a mental note. Left-handed scribe, brown tunic, his card near his ear. He may be nothing, or he may know everything. The session adjourns without drama. No one dies, no one vomits. A good day by Roman standards as you rise to leave. You pass by a column with yet another offering to Closena, this one a sprig of rosemary tied with green twine. Someone believes she's still watching. She still cares. You wonder? Back outside, the sun has begun its slow descent, softening the city's sharpness into golden blur. Letting your sandals. Decide, you need time to think. To plan, you pass another latrine. The 3rd one today. And suddenly you wonder how many of these spaces aren't just toilets, but message boards, drop points, altars. Is it possible the entire sewage system is now a form of communication? A channel literal and metaphorical for resistance? Wouldn't put it past Rome, do you think of the aqueducts, their silent precision, the way they bring water across miles, controlled and clean, and then the sewers. Hidden, chaotic, full of life. Rome always pretends to be an aqueduct, but it's a sewer. Elegant above, filthy below. And sometimes the filth is more honest. You stop to rest beneath an awning. A vendor offers you a date. You decline, not because you're not hungry, but because you're wary now of anything too sweet. In the distance, bells from a temple chime. You watch the city breathe, and in your mind, the message from the charm echoes again. Do you wash or do? You watch? You don't have an answer yet, but you're getting closer. You wake the next morning to a strange silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with possibility. Even the birds seem quieter, as if Rome itself is holding its breath. You wash quickly, dress simply, and step outside into the thinning. Morning haze, no summons, no messengers, no unexpected packages wrapped in linen. For once, a clean start. Still, your eyes scan every face. You've developed a new habit counting every cough in a crowded space. You note the direction of every throat clear, every belly clutch, every awkward step out of line. a chorus of bodily discomfort, and now every note sounds suspect. Today, you decide to visit the baths of crackle not for hygiene, but for eavesdropping. The baths are Rome's favorite place for informal intelligence. The echoes of marble. Walls carry more confessions than all the city's temples combined. You move through the warm mist of the tepidarium, letting your shoulders relax, your face assume that neutral calm. But your ears remain sharp. Two senators nearby are whispering. It's not political gossip, bodily gossip. I heard Quintus winced. Ah, in the east latrine. Ah, another one. They fall silent when you glance over. You've already gotten what you needed. The east latrine. Another one marked. It's become its own code now. You don't need names, just direction and location. The way someone whispers east latrine carries the same weight as fallen in battle might for a legionnaire. You lean back, closing your eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to listen. Someone else a merchant by his ring mentions, a friend who's refused to sit in any public facility for a week. Rumors of sponge curses. He's built a private chamber in his cellar instead. Brought in a Greek physician to inspect every sponge personally. You smile behind your eyelids. Panic has crept in, and with it, improvisation. This is what Rome does best. We do not solve. We adapt. Inconvenient truths are rebranded as stylish preferences. A man refusing to use public latrines isn't afraid he's discerning. Another claims he bathes only at night now, for spiritual clarity. He's just avoiding being seen near a sponge rack in daylight. Historians still debate whether these shifts in Roman hygiene were public health advancements or social paranoia. Masquerading as wellness, you open your eyes and leave the bath outside. The sun is sharp, and a crowd has gathered in front of a bakery. Not for bread, but for a notice. Posted on a wooden board, nailed in place with surprising neatness, is a public poem. Rhymed verse. No signature, you push forward gently for a better view. It reads, "When senators squat and secrets leak, beware the sponge, the curse it speaks. You sit to rule, you rise to fall. The drains remember. After all, it's not just clever, it's damning." Public verse is protected under Roman law, unless directly seditious. This skirts the edge beautifully. No names, no charges. But everyone knows what it's referencing. You glance around. No one's laughing. No one's tearing it down. Just a silent ripple of recognition moving through the crowd. You wonder how many more verses are out there. Scribbled, scrawled, spoken, a new kind of satire, delivered not by the elite poets, but by the sewer-scribes. As you walk away, someone calls your name. You turn. It's Senator Gallo. Harmless enough, mild, known. Mostly for a limp and a collection of vintage amphory. He falls into step beside you, adjusting his belt. They're saying Marcus Sabinus resigned, he says, eyes ahead. You raise an eyebrow. Illness, Gallo snorts. He says it's philosophical, wants to study stoicism, in the countryside. Convenient. I think Gallo lowers his voice. He sat in the wrong place. Heard he was seen in the latrines near the market basilica. Next day, pale as parchment. 2 nights later gone, you nod slowly. It fits. Tell me, Gallo says, glancing sideways. Do you believe in cursed sponges? You pause, then smile. I believe in well-placed fear. He chuckles at that, but it's nervous laughter. He knows. We're suspects. Everyone does now, and still, no one says the name. The Clocari remain the phantom at the feast, the leak in the marble, the smirk behind every whispered illness, that afternoon back at your villa. You call for your steward, inventory the house, you say. Every drain, every sponge, every scroll, I want them checked. He doesn't ask why, just bows and disappears. He's seen enough over the years not to question preemptive paranoia. You settle in your study, pull a scroll from the pile. It's a list of current public projects. Most are mundane. One catches your eye. Proposal number 441, redesign of latrine. Seating to include higher dividers and privacy screens. You laugh. Out loud this time. There it is. Fear turned into policy. You mark it. You'll vote yes, of course. Not because it's effective, but because it'll calm nerves. And calm nerves are easier to control. You lean back in your chair, its eyes on the ceiling. Once more, the house is quiet. Too quiet, you rise, move to your private lavatory, open the door. Everything is in place. The sponge bucket, the vinegar jar, the marble slab, untouched. Ordinary except one thing, carved faintly into the underside. Of the seat, we see who sits. You run your fingers across the carved words. We see who sits. They're shallow, almost delicate. Whoever inscribed them did so carefully, perhaps even reverently. A craftsman's whisper, not a vandal's shout. For a moment, you just stand there, hand resting on cold marble, trying to decide what bothers you more. That someone entered your private lavatory undetected, or that they didn't feel the need to hide what they left behind. This wasn't a warning, it was a signature, and now you know for certain you're being watched closely. You straighten, brush the seat clean, and smile just a little, not because you're amused, but because the fear has changed shape. It's no longer vague and creeping. It has form now. Focused, you light a lamp despite the hour. Shadows stretch along the edge of your study as you retrieve the scroll marked Proposal number 441. You don't plan to just vote for it anymore. You plan to speak for it. Because if privacy is power, then providing the illusion of it is control. Rome's elite are no longer afraid of daggers in the back. They're afraid of being overheard mid-squad. You ride the momentum straight to the Senate. By the time you reach the Curia, small group has already gathered. There's tension in the air. No shouting, no posturing. Just that quiet rustle of men realizing they've collectively lost control of something they never thought could be weaponized, their own bodily functions. Senator Various, loud and famously anti-superstition figure, is trying to downplay the rumors. Sponges don't carry secrets, he says. Only waste. You watch him closely. His voice is firm, but his hand trembles ever so slightly as he pours watered wine into his cup. He's not sleeping well. You step forward, calm, calculated. The problem, you say evenly, is not that sponges carry secrets. It's that we believe they might. Heads turn, a few nods, one chuckle. Nervous, you continue. The city is speaking, not through senators, but through sewage. And if we don't listen, it will rise louder. There's silence. Then a murmur. The kind that turns into votes by midday. Proposal number 441 passes. Historians will later call this moment the beginning of the privatization wave in Roman sanitation policy. Dividers will be added. Attendants will be given new roles as latrine guardians. Sponge sterilization will become an official office with an annual budget. But for now, it's just the sound of a vote echoing through marble. You leave the session with your usual pace steady, unreadable. Outside, a familiar face appears in the shadow of a pillar. The woman from the Garden of Salus. She joins your walk without invitation. You spoke well. You don't thank her? Instead, did you carve the message in my lavatory? No, she says, but I approved it. That stops you briefly. Then you nod. She reaches into her robe and hands you something smaller. Token, another charm. Oh, but different this time. Bronze, shaped like a senator's chair, but cracked down the middle. They're watching who votes, she says. I assumed as much. You pass the test. You examine the charm. It's heavier than it looks. You wonder if it's meant to be carried, hidden, or buried. Now what, you ask. Now, she says, you help us clean Rome. A noble sentiment, but almost laughable. If you weren't beginning to suspect she meant it literally, you part ways without ceremony. No nod, no goodbye. She melts back into the crowd like foam into wine. You take the charm home. Place it beside the earlier tokens, the sponge, the sigil, the drain cover amulet, your little collection of quiet rebellion. Later that evening, you attend a private dinner. It's hosted by Senator Flaccus, known for his excessive wine and dramatic size. The talk around the couches is no longer about war or trade, or temple politics. It's about toilets. One guest claims to have installed an armed guard outside his personal lavatory. Another says he now only relieves himself at dawn when the spirits are less active. The only one who doesn't comment is the man with the bandaged hand, rumor says. He was pricked by a blessed sponge and now suffers. Dreams of running water and whispering voices. You say little, but you watch everything. A slave refills your wine. You glance at his hands clean, but something is tucked into the fold of his belt. You reach subtly. It's a scrap of parchment. You don't unfold it yet, not in front of others. You excuse yourself. In Flaccus's garden, under the branches of a sleeping olive tree, you unroll the message. It's short. The next seat is not yours. But you may choose who fills it. No signature, no seal. But the meaning is clear. The Clocari are making political moves. Now, not just messages or pranks, but placements. They want influence, not just surveillance. You stare at the tree. Bark gnarled. Its leaves silver green in the starlight. It's been here longer than you. It will be here long after Rome changes. Slowly, stubbornly, and sometimes through. Sewage, you tuck the message away. You've just been handed a power no senator likes to admit exists. The chance to shape the future. One quiet whisper at a time, and all because you sat carefully and listened. It's night now, and Rome takes on a different flavor. Less bread, more wine. Less proclamation, more slurred insinuation. The streets are slick with moonlight, and torches burn low in their sconces, throwing more shadow than light. You pull your cloak tighter as you descend toward the southern edge of the Aventine, where the sewer mouths breathe faint steam into the cool air. The Garden of Salus is behind you, the Senate asleep, but the Clocari, you're beginning to suspect they never sleep. You're not out for a stroll. You're following a rumor. The note from the dinner, the next seat is not yours, but you may choose who fills it. It's still burning in your mind. If what it implies is true, then the Clocari are ready to place someone in power. Through you. And to do that, you need to understand their full reach. So you go where they live beneath the city. At the edge of a broken plaza, behind a vendor's shed, lies an old maintenance hatch. It's half hidden under ivy and a slab of marble too cracked. For reinstallation, you've passed it before, never thinking twice. But now, you kneel. Push the marble. It gives below a ladder. Stone rungs, slick with age. You descend. The air grows thick, damp, a mix of mildew and a jeweled judgment. You land in a narrow chamber, more tunnel than room. The walls are brick, patched with lime, etched in places where messages have been scraped off, then re-etched. It's not empty. A man waits in the dark, holding a torch. You know him, not by name, but by role. One of the city's public sanitation engineers, anonymous in daylight. You're a gatekeeper. You shouldn't be here, he says. You smile. Exactly why I came. He studies you for a long moment, then turns without a word. The torch leads you deeper. You walk through stone corridors lined with forgotten offerings to small tokens. Bones, scraps of poetry pressed into wet clay and tucked into corners. It's not just rebellion, it's ritual. Who started this? Ask. He shrugs. No one. Everyone. Helpful, you duck under a low arch. Water trickles somewhere nearby, echoing like breath. You come to a larger chamber, and there they are 7 figures, seated on crates, or crouched near candle stubs. None of them look at you directly. Some wear workers' clothes, others look like scribes. One's a woman in a senator's wife's. Shawl, deliberately frayed. The torchbearer gestures. Speak. You realize you're expected to lead. This is the test, so you do what Rome has taught you best. You tell a story. You speak of how the Senate has begun to murmur, how the sponges are feared, how the graffiti is read like scripture. Quote the latrine poem and hear a soft chuckle. You reference the vote on proposal number 441A. Few heads nod. You tell them about Vitellius that gets their attention. They hadn't known then that it had worked. Or maybe they hadn't expected it to work so well. You finish with the parchment.
What's the
List of names, soaked in clean sponges. Then you ask, who wrote it? No one answers, but the woman in the shawl stands. She approaches, and for the first time you can see her face clearly. Not just determined, exhausted. It's a kind of weariness that doesn't come from labor, but from hoping too long in a place that crushes hope. You misunderstand, she says. We don't choose who falls. Rome does. We just help the stink rise faster. Poetic, maddening, you nod. Accept the answer. But she's not finished. You'll propose Sabanus's replacement tomorrow. Your mouth goes dry. You hadn't planned to. Not yet. You'll suggest Lucius Carbo, she continues. He's not one of us, but he listens. You raise an eyebrow. He's unremarkable. Exactly. We need someone who doesn't shine. It's just someone who doesn't rot. You pace, processing. This isn't politics anymore. It's plumbing, clogged systems, pressure points, flood and release. You think of the old saying, the cloaca carries what the forum cannot bear. You look at the gathered faces, some hopeful, some indifferent, want to sleep or pretending to be. This is Rome now. Above ground, the Senate argues about grain. Below, the city chooses its future one sponge at a time. You nod, I'll place his name. The woman smiles, not as thanks, but as acknowledgement, a valve opening. The torchbearer leads you back. As you climb into the night air, you breathe deeply. The stars overhead feel fake after so much stone and soot. You begin the walk home, but you take the long way. Past the latrines near the forum, past the bathhouse where Sabanus once stood, past the fountain where rumors get rinsed clean. At your villa gate, you stop. Something's waiting on your doorstep. A sponge, soaked, but not with waste, with wine dark red. Dyed to it a ribbon bearing a single word, witness. You bring the wine-soaked sponge inside carefully, like you're cradling a snake that might still bite. The smell is sharp-spiced, somehow. It's not just fermented grapes, but something floral beneath. Like crushed rose petals wilted in a storm. You set it on the marble basin in your study. Stare at it. Witness. The word loops through your thoughts like a drain too proud to clog. It's not an accusation. It's not a warning. It's a designation. You're no longer just an observer. You've been seen. Marked. They expect you to record. To speak? Perhaps? Or stay silent in exactly the right way? Either way, the sponge is your badge now. And the badge in Rome is never optional. You pour yourself watered wine, and this time you sniff it twice before drinking. Your mind drifts back to the sewer chamber, the quiet eyes, the steady torch. To the woman in the frayed shawl, her face haunts you, not because it was terrifying, but because it wasn't. It was just tired and terribly familiar. You've seen that look on slaves forced to recount truth before senators. It's on widows listening to votes that would raise their taxes and deny their sons grain. Rome has always been run by the rested. The cloacarai, it seems, are the city's insomnia. You sleep poorly that night. Dreams flicker, drains overflowing, sponges floating like lost flags. The Senate house cracking open like a rotted fig. Through it all, someone walks barefoot behind. You, just out of reach. Whispering the word witness with every step, you wake with sore muscles and an even sorer suspicion. It's time to propose.
Darbo?
You dress in darker robes today? Not mourning, just caution. Your steward looks you over and asks if you'd like a driver. You decline. Walking feels safer. It's long the way. Rome hums with its usual dissonant chorus. The fishmongers shout, the priests chant, the pickpockets pray for rain. But beneath it, a strange quiet pulses, kind of breath hold. You feel it most when you pass the main latrine outside the forum. There's a line unusually long. No one speaking. Just a dozen men standing awkwardly, all pretending they don't have thoughts about where they're headed. You keep walking. Inside the Senate, the air is heavy. You take your seat with deliberate ease. When the floor opens, for motions you stand. Senators, you begin. I propose Lucius Carbo to assume the vacant seat left by Marcus Sabinus. The words hang, echo. Several heads tilt. Carbos no one's favorite. That's why you picked him. He's tepid wine in a city of vinegar and oil, palatable, non-threatening. One senator scoffs. Carbo. He once took 3 weeks to resolve a single land dispute, which, you say smoothly, proves his patience. Rome could use more of that. Laughter. Not much, but enough to break the tension. Another senator leans forward. Is he affiliated? You know what he means? Is he cloakary? No, you reply, but he listens to whispers. That lands. Heavy, because the whispers now matter more than ever. The vote passes. Barely you step outside for air. The sun is high, too high. You wish it would dim itself, just for an hour. Just long enough for Rome to stop pretending everything is fine. As you turn a corner, someone brushes past you. A scroll is pressed into your hand, quick and practiced. You don't stop. Just keep walking until you reach the shadow of a column. You open it. It's not a message. It's a sketch. A cutaway of a latrine chamber, one of the smaller. This one's near the Basilica. Julia, but this isn't architectural. It's instructional, marked in red ink. 2 stones to loosen, a channel beneath them. Space for deposits of information. They've made a dead drop. Rome's own postal system run through stink and shadow. You exhale through your nose. The absurdity is almost beautiful. Later that day, you check the site. Just to confirm, the stone gives easily, beneath a hollow, empty for now, but ready. You place a note, short-coded. Carbo-seated, Senate.com. Witness still dry. Seal it. In wax, place it in a cloth wrap. Tuck it gently into the hollow. Return the stone. And just like that, you're part of the city's new bloodstream. Historians centuries from now may never find these messages. Or they'll uncover fragments half-washed papyrus, lead scrolls too corroded to read, they'll theorize, argue. Pub papers about secret societies and sewer rebellions. But none of them will truly understand the smell, the tension, the half-sarcastic terror of a sponge handled too carelessly back at your villa. The wine sponge is gone. In its place, a folded square of cloth. You open it inside. Perfectly clean sponge. Dry. Wrapped in lavender leaves. And stitched into the cloth. Clean. Hands make clear records. You almost laugh, almost. It's near dusk again, and Rome's golden hour bleeds into rust. The sun droops over the rooftops like a tired sentry, casting long shadows across the forum. The statues look older in this light-wrinkled, pockmarked, burdened by memory. You stand at the edge of the latrine behind the Temple of Concord, staring at a sponge rack like it holds the fate of empires, because maybe now it does. The clean sponge they left you, lavender-scented, lovingly wrapped, was not just a gift. It was an invitation. Maybe even a promotion. You're no longer just a witness. You're becoming what? An archivist, a courier, senator with more power than his titles suggest, or maybe just a man with one foot in the forum and the other, dangling over the cloaca maxima. Behind you, the water flows gently beneath the stone benches. The air here is surprisingly fresh. Incense burns from a nearby altar to Closina. White smoke curls into the breeze. You take a seat. Not to use the latrine, just to sit. To exist in the same space that once terrified you no longer. Now you understand here. In the stone curves and trickling drains, Rome tells the truth. The Senate postures, the laws lie, the gods remain silent. But the sewers are always honest. They carry exactly what you feed them. No more, no less. You reach into your robe. Another note penned in your careful script. Proposal. Past carbo-seated, cloakari growing bolder. Forum beginning to whisper, you stand. Walk to the far wall. Behind a crumbling mosaic of Neptune and his badly drawn horses, you find the slit between stones your new inbox. You slide the note in. Pause. You add something else. A scrap of cloth from the lavender wrap, tied around the note like a ribbon. Just to let them know, message received, sent retained. You step back into the street. As you pass through the crowd, someone grabs your arm gently, not aggressively. A young woman in servant's garb. Her eyes are sharp, her voice low. They say the eastern drains murmur Carbo's name. You nod. They say a senator is helping. You shrug. Are they thankful? She grins. They're curious. Fair. Rome runs on curiosity, after all, and fear and gossip. You walk on. Back at your villa, your steward greets you with a bowed head and an unreadable expression. He hands you a scroll, not a message. Report an update on sponge imports from Alexandria. You smile. Of course. Trade follows fear. Someone is already profiting. You scan the scroll. Prices rising. Demand up. Private sponge holders being hired by wealthy families. One client is even requesting personalized embroidery. Rome, ladies and gentlemen, never wastes an opportunity. In the distance, bells toll. Tomorrow, a new vote. One unrelated to sanitation, at least on the surface. But you suspect the undercurrent will bubble up again. They always do that night. You lie in bed beneath a mosaic of Mercury with wings on his sandals and a smirk on his face. You wonder if even gods use public facilities. You imagine they don't? You imagine they have their own plumbing somewhere on Olympus, sparkling and divine. Sponge-free. But even gods, you suspect, would envy Rome's underworld. The pipes, the flow, the hidden life beneath the city's shining mask. You drift, slowly, into sleep. And just before it takes you fully, you think, we are all drains in the end. Carry what no one else will. We pass what no one wants to hold. Remember, everything, even as we let it go. The city of Rome exhales as the stars settle overhead. The streets still hum. Softly feet patting on stone, the clink of amphora lids, a dog scratching at a closed gate, but the roar is gone. The empire sleeps, and you too let go. Let your shoulders relax. Feel the coolness of evening slide over your skin like linen. You've walked the streets, sat in the shadows, read the signs, left your messages. The sewers below still flow, gently now, not in haste, but in rhythm. They carry the weight of 1,000 forgotten words, of curses, of hopes, of whispered truths, passed from hand to hand. They do not judge. They do not pause. They do what Rome cannot. They move on. In your mind, the benches grow distant. The echoes fade. The sponge, the sigil, the secret meetings all shrink to a pinprick of candlelight at the end of a long corridor. And above you, stars glint over the forum like breadcrumbs scattered by the gods, or perhaps by a very hungry crow with good aim. The wind rustles fig leaves. You let your breath slow, and you remember, not every witness speaks. Some simply observe. Some keep the city steady by knowing when not to shift their weight. Tonight, you rest. Rome turns without you for a few quiet hours. The water flows, the drains sleep, and so do you.